All right, it looks like it's time for another podcast episode. Today I'm talking about legal immigration. And this is something that I've heard a ton of since Trump got elected into office again for the second time, because he is anti-immigration, but a lot of Republicans say he's not anti-immigration, he just believes in legal immigration. You have to cross the border legally. And in fact, I saw a clip of the guy he put in charge of the border security saying almost word for word this exact thing. And he's going to persecute anybody who comes illegally, deport them. He says that they're criminal, it's against the law to do so. And we're not going to get too much into that argument. What I want to talk about today is, what does it mean to have a pro-legal immigration stance? Because all of this is just masquerading as a pro-legal immigration stance. People saying that Trump is actually for immigration as long as it's legal. Let me explain why it's not accurate. I know intimately about this issue because I am an immigrant. I'm not an immigrant into the United States. I'm an immigrant to the Netherlands. I'm an American who immigrated to Holland. And when I was 22, 24, right around there, living in the U.S., I had an apartment that was not a two-bedroom, but it had like this big living area that I sectioned off and sublet, rented that section out. And for a while, there was a lady living there who was Mexican and going for her U.S. citizenship. She was the girlfriend of the guy who I was dating at the time's dad. And she didn't speak a ton of English. I speak Spanish, so that's how we communicated. And she was trying to learn English, but she was a bit shy, and I feel like that's kind of gets in the way of a lot of people trying to learn a language. But nevertheless, if you move to a country and plan to live there, work there, have social connections there, file taxes there, have government forms there, of course you have to learn the language. So I would say she wasn't as motivated for that part, or wasn't having as easy of a time with that part. But I did witness her studying a lot for the test, and I did go with her to take the test to become a U.S. citizen. And so I do know somewhat of that experience. So her experience was vastly different to mine. And that's why I don't think that Trump is pro-legal immigration. I just think he's anti-immigration, because my process being an immigrant in the Netherlands has been way easier. Even at the very base level, first big comparison I can make is that although I've also had to take exams about the political structure and the culture of the Netherlands, and one thing that they have in the Netherlands that we don't have in the U.S. in order to get your citizenship is a language proficiency exam. And so actually most of your immigration process in the Netherlands is language proficiency. At least it takes up, I would say, 60% when you actually calculate, but it is different for everybody. So refugees that come here from Middle Eastern countries usually actually have to do more things like learning about the labor market. They spend a lot more time in classes that are free, by the way, provided to them. They spend a lot more time in classes about culture and about the labor market than they do with language learning. But for me, who is here on a partner visa, because my partner, which they treat as a husband, so I could say, because my husband is Dutch, he's a Dutch citizen, he has a right for any of his family members to live here. And since I am in an exclusive relationship with him that can be documented, and we had an affidavit signed by his mom to prove that we were, had been seeing each other and had an exclusive relationship for more than 6 months, when I applied for my visa, I am considered a family member of his because they treat partnerships and girlfriend and boyfriend relationships as seriously as a marriage, because you have the right to love whoever you want to love, to have whoever in your life that you want to have in your life. But there are stipulations that I have to adhere to and perform in order to have, I guess right now it's just in order to be in good standing with my visa. My visa is a temporary 5-year long visa where for those 5 years I'm allowed to live and work in the Netherlands. I'm supposed to pay taxes, but normally if you come here to visit, you can't just stay. You can stay for up to 3 months if that's how long your vacation is, but you can't just come here into the country and then get a job and stuff like that, because first of all, most employers are hesitant to give you a job under the table. So the employment industry, the employment sector of the government is well regulated to where most companies are not going to hire you if you don't have a visa that says you are allowed to work. So that pretty much leaves you only to be able to do like house cleaning jobs, babysitting, maybe handyman work, stuff like that, to where you just do small little jobs and people pay you in cash. And, which we also have those type of jobs in the U.S., but we also have a lot of more businesses that do pay under the table. That's a lot more common in the U.S. So if you're pro-legal immigration, you would be cracking down on that type of stuff. That would be one of the things that you would do. But also, if you're pro-legal immigration, you would want to provide certain resources to people who are immigrating to allow them to be able to participate in the culture. Like, you would give them more expectations or regulations around learning the language, which a lot of people who are against immigrants coming into the U.S. would support, because it's the same type of people who are like, speak English, this is America. And I don't completely disagree with that. The thing is, like, I'm very liberal, but as an immigrant, I knew that I was coming here to live. So one of my very first and most important priorities from that point on, still is to today, is learning the language. I'm not going to move to a country and not learn the language. I'm hesitant to even visit a country for tourist reasons, for vacation, without learning to say please and thank you. That's just, to me, logical. Just makes sense. It's a bit entitled to not do that. But if you're a refugee, like a lot of people who flee Mexico are, and a lot of people in this country who flee Middle Eastern countries are, and we also have tons of Ukrainian people who flew their country, fled from their country, and became a refugee here. And because the Netherlands accepts refugees, and they have agreed with, the United Nations in order to do so, which the U.S. has agreed as well. They are a part of that peace agreement that allows people who have significant danger or threats to their lives, in their daily lives, in their country because of war or because of crime or because of violence. They have a right to flee to any of the countries who are on the list. So, but we're landlocked with Mexico, whereas I think Mexicans technically could flee to the Netherlands. It's easier to flee to the United States. I mean, the United States is not the only country that brings in refugees. So they're also not the only country that has immigrants. So this whole fear about like losing the American culture and people not speaking English and losing culture is not special to America. A lot of other countries, and if you think about all these small European countries, like the Netherlands, which is like this small little country, I think probably smaller than England, doesn't mean they're not mighty. They do a ton of export, and they are one of the most successfully, like, business-minded countries in the world. The fear is there that if you take in all these immigrants, there will be less resources, on one hand, for Dutch people and Dutch citizens, or American people, American citizens, and that part of your culture will slip away. So I can totally understand people who have those fears wanting immigrants to embrace American culture, embrace American language, and become a part of the fabric of our country. And I don't disagree with that at all. The only thing is those resources are currently not available, and if you are a person who wants legal immigration to promote people actually taking the route towards citizenship and integration that's necessary in order for living a healthy life and contributing to the system instead of taking from it, then you have to offer more resources. You have to offer people that are going to guide them through it, because the goal is for them to, in a short period, let's say 5 years' time, be able to be self-sufficient in the American system and be paying back into the tax system. If that's the goal, then we have to set up classes for the immigrant. We have to set up agents that are not even the go-between really between the government and them, but just like government agents that meet with them and tell them, this is what's expected of you, this is the timeline that you have, here are the resources that you have, you need to go to this class, you need to learn the language to this level, here's where you're going to have your exams, this is how much time you have to do it, here are all the people and the numbers and the offices and the social services offices that can help you, and this is your goal. That's what I got. I have a person at the city hall who I meet with every 4 to 6 months, and we go over my plan and how I'm coming on it. And I also got, I'm like pacing, out of breath. I also got a job coach appointed to me who is a volunteer. He's retired, but he worked in the talent, like he was a recruiter for companies getting qualified candidates to fill certain positions. He works for this other company called Big Ass Batteries, and they bring huge stereo systems, and they bring batteries for huge stereo systems to concerts and stuff. So it eliminates the needs for generators and eliminates the noise of generators. So they rent those out. He works for them, either, I don't know, marketing or whatever, and he does that only 1 or 2 times a week, but he's got a full career of experience with career, like in a legit career, like whereas I don't. I'm just a babysitter, and I got to meet with him however often I wanted, but usually in the beginning it was once a week, and then once we kind of got like a trajectory of where I wanted to go as far as my career goals, it was once every few weeks. And the point is, right now, I'm a babysitter. And as an immigrant, that means that I don't really pay into the tax system because I don't even really make enough money to be required to pay taxes to get in that tax bracket. So the goal is to get me to a higher level of salary to where I can be giving back to the system instead of taking from it. And that's the goal with all the immigrants. That's the goal with every Dutch child even. Because Dutch children, like American children, get benefits from the government. Their parents get child tax on their tax returns. They go to public education, which costs money. Every Dutch child, every American child, every immigrant to the Netherlands, and every immigrant to America take benefits from the system. That's okay, but the goal is to get them to be paying into the system as opposed to taking from it. So we have this deficit in the United States. And, one of the ways that the Netherlands deals with that issue is that college, is subsidized by the government. This is one of those ways where if you give money to somebody every month while they go to school, you don't know exactly where that's going necessarily, but if you subsidize the school, like if you, as a government, give money to the education system so that tuition is affordable, or if you work it out to where, you paid this much of each student's tuition, then it's not like the benefits are just going nowhere. I will be able to attend college at one of the top universities in the entire country for $4,000 a year. Not a semester, per year. And that's because I am, under my visa, a family member of a Dutch citizen, and so I get a lot of those same rights and benefits. If I was an international student, like from the U.S., wasn't even immigrating here at all, just wanted to go to a college in the Netherlands, the price is $16,000 per year, which is still cheaper than most colleges in the U.S. This is just crazy. So the government really puts a lot of money into education because that's how your citizens and your refugees get into that higher tax bracket, and that's how they start paying back into the system as opposed to taking from it. So education really is the key to all this. Well, there's a lot of keys to all this. That's the key to solving that specific problem of more people being on benefits than what's paying in. It's not the solution to immigration, but that's one of them. And I don't know what refugees, what price they get if they're in bracket A or bracket B of, Dutch student prices as opposed to international student prices. But either way, cheaper than the States. Like, it's either an absolute fraction of what college in the States costs, or it's comes in about on par or just below. So that's at least from the U.S. I don't know what it's like in Middle Eastern countries or in Ukraine, but it doesn't matter because their infrastructure is completely fucked right now because of war. So I digress. Yeah, my immigration process was, I got a letter in the mail saying, "Woohoo, you're immigrating to the Netherlands. That's great news. You have an appointment at this day at this time to meet with your client manager." And this was a person that I met with at City Hall who works for the government, who told me all my expectations. I immediately began studying for my Dutch exams. Those were, I guess, my first priority because I guess it just seemed like the most easy, reachable goal because I love language and I enjoy studying it, and I was already just on my own as a hobby really interested in studying the Dutch language after being an au pair here, which is like a nanny that lives with the family like on a cultural exchange program. That's before I met my boyfriend, and I met him during my time here, and after we were long distance for a while, I decided to come and live with him for a while, and because of that, I applied for a visa, and because of that, I became an immigrant. That's how it happened. I didn't really expect to become an immigrant, but I got this letter in the mail saying, well, you're living here as a family member with this person that you have a relationship with, and you're expected to integrate into Dutch society. So you're going to learn the language. You're going to take a class about the labor market and what your rights as an employee are, and how it works, the whole system of what you might think is basic, but submitting a resume to a company, submitting a letter of interest, For some people from different countries, this is totally new for them. You get a job by knowing your friend's dad works at this company or owns this grocery store, and you get a job from knowing people. So it's very basic at the beginning of this is how you'll get a job in the Netherlands, and these are all the different types of jobs. The economy does really well here, so there's tons of work. There's this website where you can go and find, it's kind of like the employment website. You can go and find which sectors are currently looking for nurses, or which sectors are currently looking for people to work in daycares, or, you can search by job position or by sector, and you can see whether, there are currently 5 openings for jobs in a 50-mile radius of you, or whether there are currently 500. And so that gives you a good idea of if you need to take a training course, or, you need to get a job and you're kind of interested in this type of work. It gives you a focus and a direction, okay, it seems like there are a shortage of people doing this particular job, and sometimes you do need to follow a class or get a certification for it. You're not going to be a judicial clerk just because you have been a secretary before in your life. You still have to sometimes go and do a 6-week course or do a 1-year course or something like that. But they teach you how to do all of this. All of this stuff was free. I was expected to go. I was required to go if I was going to be in good standing. And as I said before, my visa is valid for 5 years. And if my boyfriend and I are still together after that, and I've done everything that they've asked of me, then I'll just be pacing. I'm out of breath. If I do everything they've asked of me and I'm in good standing, they will give me, citizenship. Because at that point, I've earned it. If I can participate in everyday Dutch society, I know the language, I know how the job market works, I have a job, then I guess even if my boyfriend and I break up, I've earned it. And I can go back to the States then if I want to. It doesn't mean that it's easy to live here. There's a housing shortage here as well. Rent is really high, It's still easier to live with the 2-income household. And it might be easier for me to go back to my country. But if I were to stay, I would at least be able to participate in Dutch culture and speak the Dutch language. And at one point, you get to a point where you don't need the English translations on your official legal forms anymore, which they do provide, just like we do in the States. We provide forms for taxes in Spanish. And everybody's oh, yeah, not everybody, but a lot of right-leaning people get a bad taste in their mouth that Spanish is one of the ways that you can get official government documents. Let me just speak to those people really quick, because here's the thing. They might be able to do a lot of stuff in English and to speak about a lot of stuff in English, but the way that learning a language goes, it's your vocabulary is very specific to what you're going to use on a daily basis. So they might be able to speak to you about hobbies that they have or things their kids are studying in school, and they might be actually quite competent in English for daily life, but government forms are difficult for a native English speaker to understand in English. So to expect somebody for who English is a second language, to be able to understand and navigate those is just fucking rude, honestly. So I hope that explains why it shouldn't be a big deal at all to provide forms in other languages, because that's an official translation from the government, and you can be assured that there are less misunderstandings and misinterpretations than if you were to scan that document into Google Translate or something. It's just, or some people, have to hire a lawyer or something like that. And that's the thing with being an immigrant to the U.S. Because there are no resources and no government agents to explain to people what the expectations are of them to become an immigrant and to go for citizenship. They have to pay thousands to lawyers who specialize in that. And that's just not something everybody has. If I had to pay thousands to a lawyer in order to immigrate to the Netherlands, I wouldn't be able to, and I just wouldn't. But it doesn't mean I would leave. Me and my boyfriend are in a relationship, and I have a right to live and love who I want, where I want. We're all citizens of the earth. I mean, it's not my fault I was born in the United States. This is the person I love, and I want to live with him, and he wants me to live with him, and that's that. We're going to do that. I'm not going to, I don't know. I myself obey more of the laws of nature than the laws of society. This is getting too in the weeds, though. What I just want to say is just that. If I had to pay a lawyer thousands, I would still be an illegal immigrant. Because at one point, what I want for my life is something that I have to grasp and take control of and get my hands on and do my hardest to try and do. And it's not that I'm grasping the chance to make millions and exploit other people and abuse other people and whatever. It's just, this is where I want to live my life with this person that I love. And for some people, it's, I want to raise my children in a safe environment and have a humble home with a little bit of land. You know, it's like everybody has the right to get the life that they want as long as they're not hurting other people. So to close this off, what I've been meaning to say too this whole time is like when my roommate, who was going for her American citizenship, went to take her exam, she had to go all the way to Salem, which was like an 8-hour drive, in order to even sit for the exam. And if she had failed it, she would have had to schedule a different appointment on a different day and do it again. So this trip cost her hundreds in fuel prices and hotel costs. And, you know, there was nobody to guide her on what to study or where. I mean, it was 8 hours away. First of all, that's just right there. That's a huge cost and a huge journey for somebody who doesn't have many connections yet. Or even if she'd been in the U.S. actually quite a while, so she did actually have a community. It's just a shame to me that my classes that I had to go for the labor market were literally in my town. And I live in a town of, 30,000 people, so it's, or maybe up to 50,000 people, so it is a bigger sized, like in between a town and a city. So maybe some of the people from the smaller towns surrounding my city would have to come into my city, but it wouldn't be more than a 45-minute drive to get to these classes. And there are government buildings in every capital city, which we also have in the U.S. It's just our capital cities are like so far apart. And I don't know. Never mind what I was just going to say. What I'm trying to get to is that I didn't have to go that far to take my tests. I did have to take 5 different tests, which I preferred because it was like I got to take them each in different sections. So I had one about Dutch culture, and then I had 4 different ones on language. So it was like different language skills. It was the reading skill, the listening skill, the writing skill, and did I already say reading? A speaking skill. So it was 4 different language exams and 1 culture exam. And, as I said, I was required to attend certain classes about the labor market. I was offered a job coach that wasn't mandatory. These are all the things that were mostly free. I did have to pay $50 for each exam, and I did have to travel there on the train, usually 30 minutes to an hour travel time, and I had to pay for the train ticket. But I'm just saying, I had so many more resources as an immigrant, and yeah, those all cost money. But there's a purpose to it, to get me into that higher tax bracket, to help immigrants understand and participate in Dutch culture, Dutch language. And if you're a person who supports legal immigration, it just stands to reason that these are things on your agenda. And if these types of resources and this system that works to integrate people into American culture and to speak American English, if that's not a priority to you, then you don't have a pro-legal immigration stance. You have an anti-immigration stance. You just don't want people coming, and you want people who are here to have the most difficult time doing it in hopes that they'll just go back. But what it actually creates is a bunch of people who are scared out of their wits, but the thing is, the risk of dying in their home country is scarier than the risk of getting caught and or the sad reality that you'll never be able to make a certain amount of money or perhaps do what you were trained to do, because a lot of people flee their home country when they're actually skilled workers at something. Or there might be doctors, they might be nurses. Doctors probably have enough money to get a lawyer and to jump through the hoops and become legal, but there are a lot of other people who have a lot of either potential, are very intelligent, but they don't have a good education system in their own country, who could be trained to fill a gap in, let's say we have a shortage of nurses, or we have a shortage of teachers, or we have a shortage of bricklayers, or we have a shortage of engineers. There are plenty of people who flee from their own country who are intelligent enough, if you give them the pathway, if you help them down the path, to ascend to those levels and then essentially pay into our tax system. So if you're pro-legal immigration, this should be step by step what you want to have accomplished, because this is the most practical and most economically beneficial way to do it. And if you just don't want immigrants to come here, then just say you're anti-immigration. I mean, you're racist if that's what you want. And I do understand at some level where it comes from, because it's that fear of less resources being available to American citizens. And again, for the culture to just be lost, I guess. I totally understand that. But there's a way to take care that also gets respected and considered when providing resources to immigrants and requirements for them. The thing is, we just have to give them a pathway in order to fulfill these requirements, or else they're not going to do it and the whole country will be worse for it. So I hope that you learned something in this episode. I surely enjoyed speaking on my experience. And let's make a change in the United States, Let's make a change. Let's make education more affordable for everybody. That's just a good idea, because then we're just going to have a more educated public. We're going to have more skilled people who can become surgeons, become teachers, become engineers. We'll just have a better society. And I forgot what else I was going to say as a second point, but I'll leave you with that. Let's get to work. Till the next one. Bye.